treatment advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
Hey travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
We're listening to JoCo Community Radio.
Well, good afternoon, Johnson County. Welcome back to Let Freedom Ring. We are blessed to be here on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. It's wonderful outside. A little bit windy, but not as windy as it is in Washington, D.C. Everybody remembers the mythos, the urban legend that Chicago was the Windy City. Well, here with all of these big spending bills and the mass amounts of armament sent to Ukraine, I wouldn't put it past our politicians to now make Washington, D.C. the windiest city in America, where even the last audit done on the Pentagon and the Treasury both seem to have blown away almost a combined $8.8 trillion of the money. Nobody knows where it went. The Department of Defense came out and said about $3.8 trillion, or roughly almost a tenth of our national debt, has gone missing. Nobody knows where that is. And $5 trillion is unaccounted for in COVID spending from the Department of the Treasury. We're not sure where it went. So that's in recent events. Today's episode, we are proud and pleased to have the esteemed Matthew Lucci back. Many of you know that he has been on here several times, and we've discussed everything from personal betterment. We've discussed the betterment of our country. We've discussed many political things. So we want to thank you for coming on, Matthew, again.
Of course, Jake. It's always a pleasure to be on the Let Freedom Ring show here on Joco Community Radio.
First of all, I want to say a kind of reach out of the heart to the community here. Many of you might have gotten the image recently or lately that just because I have Matthew on here quite a bit, that I hold some sort of a bias, or I hold some sort of a preliminary idea of who I support in this congressional race, but that's not true at all. We have reached out to the Democrats. We've reached out to the opponents, the incumbents in the Republican Party. Have heard nothing back. Matthew is the only candidate that I have gotten a contact from that is his direct cell phone number, except for maybe the John O'Shea, the gentleman running for Kay Granger's seat up in Fort Worth. There are not a lot of politicians that are willing to give out their personal contacts, especially to be brought on and questioned in front of the American people. It's an art that was lost with the when the gold standard went out the window. William Jennings Bryan was really the last one that was really willing to be brought up and questioned on the basis of change in this country, and that's something that has been lost, especially for our generation, Matthew. So I don't want anybody out there to get the idea that I bring Matthew on here just because I like him, just because, it gives out the wrong idea that he's the candidate that I've chosen. Really, what it's all about is we want to have congressional candidates on here as many times as it takes to get the American people knowledgeable of who is running, who is the best fit that they think for their office. I'm just like every other citizen on this show. The many times that Matthew Lucci has come on here is some of the several times that I get to talk to him. And it's always a pleasure because it's not every day we get to see somebody from our own generation that is running for a congressional office for some of the highest offices in the land in this country. And many people take advantage of that and create views and narratives that are really astounding to the American way of life. They are willing to come out and, frankly, discriminate. They are so readily accessible to the idea of a prejudice against somebody without having ever met them, without ever having the notion that they need to defend their view, and the idea that they can come out and harass people, frankly, is something that we don't think about in this country, but we do it on a daily basis. You see the gentleman with raggy clothes walking into the grocery store, you think he's homeless. You see a young man running for office, he must be a communist, because apparently no young people can do anything good for this country and stand up for American values anymore without being a traitor to their party, to their country. Well, let me tell you something. To me, there were good Democrats in the past. There were good people. John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, many of those young people, the youngest presidents we've had in recent history, stood up for desegregation. They stood up for civil rights, something that was denied to blacks, to Asians, to everybody in this country for almost 100 years. And it got done under a young person. So just because we have young people running for office doesn't mean that we don't like old people, doesn't mean that we don't care for the views of prior generations. There's always something more we can learn. I really just wanted to get this out of the way real quick, kind of a dissemination of my thoughts on this. That we have Matthew in here a lot because it's good to get to know who's running for your office. So first of all, we're going to kind of do questions and answers. First of all, I kind of want to get out of the way, Matthew. Tell us a little bit about how your campaign's been going. I know we've kind of caught up on this a few times in the last few months. Tell us kind of what's been going on and the recent happenings behind your campaign.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. We have a lot of momentum building. I came on the show a few weeks back and talked about our Take Our Country Back tour, which was a 12-day tour across all 13 counties in this congressional district. And to our knowledge, it's one of the first times, if not the first time, that it had ever been done in this congressional district.
Really?
It's the first. I looked into it.
All right. Well, Sean here, my campaign manager, he says it's the first, so it must be the first time that anyone had ever gone to all 13 counties in a 12-day span while campaigning for federal office.
In the new district.
Yeah.
We just had the line redrawn. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the second election cycle that folks have had the opportunity to. And this is the first election cycle where it's actually a contested election.
Yeah.
What happened before is you had a guy who was running unopposed, and Austin drew him some district lines that included 13 counties, and he didn't even run a campaign. Not in the primary, not in the general. He didn't have to. He spent $2 million on fancy dinners and big consulting fees to a bunch of people who just said, yeah, you don't have to run a campaign. Don't spend the money on anyone other than us. And so as we've gone around the district, we've met with thousands and thousands of folks who don't even know who their congressman is. If they do, they've heard very little about what he's done. In fact, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the last bill that he passed into law, and that was renaming the post office here in Burleson back in 2014. And so as we've gone around the district, we've met with so many people who want something better out of Congress, who feel like, and rightfully so, that DC is not working for them anymore.
Yeah.
Because DC is not working for us anymore. We've got people who we send 2,000 miles away, and then they forget about us as soon as that plane lands there in Washington, D.C. And so as we've been going across this congressional district, we've been asking folks to help us get on the ballot. We needed a certain number of signatures, bare minimum 500, but every single one of those is going to be challenged in court.
Yeah.
But we would rather go around and we get the support of the district, the people who live here, the people who work here, who want something better for their future, for their kids' future, for their grandkids' future. People who are looking at the price of gas, people who are looking at the price of groceries and saying, look, the economy's not working for us anymore. My wages aren't keeping up with this. People who look at the national debt just skyrocketing and say, hey, I want a member of Congress who is not voting to keep kicking the can down the road and mortgaging our kids' future in the name of political wins right now.
We've seen $26 trillion just in the 20 years that I have been alive. $26 trillion added to the debt is something that it's hard for us to even fathom how big a number that is.
The national debt has doubled since our current congressman got elected.
Really?
And he has voted multiple times to raise the national debt, to keep borrowing from investors who would have otherwise invested in small businesses here in our local communities in Johnson County and beyond, and voted continuously to keep printing more money, driving up inflation, making it more expensive for us to put gas in the tank, put food on the table, and keep a roof over our heads. And so all across the district, people were telling us enough is enough. We want someone who's going to stand up for our values and is actually going to fight for us in Washington, D.C. And so we collected hundreds and hundreds of signatures. We actually collected, I believe, 3,000 signatures from across the district.
Wow.
And we actually went earlier this week to Austin, to the Texas Republican Party headquarters, and brought with us a big stack of signatures and said, here you go. Here are signatures for the first time ever from all 13 counties in the 25th Congressional District. The first time that has ever been done in the new 25 or in the old 25 or in the 25 before that. This is the first time it's ever been done where all 13 counties in the district have had folks sign the petition saying, we want someone new on the ballot. We want someone to challenge an incumbent congressman of our own party who is not working for us anymore, someone who voted against the border wall, someone who said there was no declaration of a border emergency, and someone who could not even be bothered to show up to work on the day that it came to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas for dereliction of duty. He's not showing up for us. It is about time we show up for ourselves, and that is what this campaign is about. Those of us Republicans, those of us conservatives around the 25th Congressional District showing up together on March 5th or through early voting, which starts February 20th and runs through March 1st, and saying we are standing up for ourselves. Doesn't matter how many billboards this other guy puts up lying to us using our own tax dollars to do it. We're going to stand up for ourselves, and we are going to vote one of our own in this time rather than letting DC or Austin choose our congressman for us.
So today, I should add, is a call-in show. So if there's anybody that has any comments, questions, concerns, it can be a good question. It could be a very conspicuous question. 817-637-2585. 817-637-2585 is the call-in number. If you feel the need to pitch in, or you've heard something about Matthew that you kind of want fact checked, we're not a communist establishment here. You can feel free to call in, pitch your concerns, pitch your woos, whatever. So I kind of want to get off on a get to know the candidate thing, just as we would do for anybody else, Matthew. I feel like too many times we get a congressman, we get a politician who really, Joe Biden has ruined this a lot. He's had 20 different jobs by the time he was 10. He's been the world's youngest competitive squirrel shooting water skier.
I hadn't heard that one yet.
Probably that'll come out here in the next few days. That was leaked to me, by the way, from Jen Psaki. He was apparently a Columbia University professor, a Penn State professor. Next thing you know, he's going to be working under J. Robert Oppenheimer developing the nuclear bomb here pretty soon. So I feel like it's imperative that we kind of ask questions and answers right off the bat and see who we're electing. I know, Matthew, we've discussed a lot of political viewpoints, a lot of advantages of young people these days. If it's all right with you, there's a few pressing questions that I've seen from people around the district that I've noticed, that I've picked up. I want to ask you a few questions if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, right off the bat, something that I've heard from members of the Republican Party that have been voting Republican for years, they see a young person running in their district for the first time. Now, you can imagine the shock, the surprise of them. Many of them are worried that you are an undercover Democrat. Are you an undercover Democrat?
I am not an undercover Democrat.
So let's say you get into Congress and people are so used to, I feel like it's a coping mechanism almost. We have seen for the last 50 years in this country, congressmen get in and then stab the American people in the back. And all the people can really do is they're too scared to vote the guy out because they don't know who's going to replace him. They're too scared to ask the new guy a question because they'd rather feel suspicious and skeptical. Rightfully so. This is the American federal government. They've been duped over many times. What can you tell them to kind of ease that? We've seen people, say many things. I've heard many things about you. The worries from especially older citizens. What do you want to tell them, to the district?
Yeah, what I'll say to them is the same thing I say to all of our volunteers. You can go to the website. It's www.luccifortexas.com. And hopefully, Sean, you can get that in the comments.
Already on it.
I appreciate you. Go check it out. See what we're about. Okay. When we talk to our volunteers, we say, look, we need you to go out in your precinct and in your neighborhood, knock on doors. We'll give you a list. Text people, get them out to the polls. We'll give you a list. You can print off material from our website to help you go door to door to get folks out to vote. If you help us get out to vote and get folks from all over our district out to vote, if you put yourself on the line here and say, this is someone who is promising change. Here's someone who is fighting to secure the border, fighting to defend innocent life, someone who's fighting against human trafficking, someone who's fighting against the drug crisis, someone who wants to take care of our veterans and get them the health care that they've earned. This is someone we can get behind. We'll give you the material. We'll tell you these are the folks to go talk to. We'll give you the lists. We'll give you the contact information. And then, should I get elected, and hopefully when I get elected, go and judge me by everything that we put on the website. And I judged our current congressman by that. He had 14 things on his website, I believe, back when he ran the first time back in 2012. He got 1 out of 14 done, and he had nothing to do with that one that he did. That's a failing grade in my book. And I'm a college professor. So I see a lot of failing grades. But what I'll say is, look, go through there. And if I do not get an A, if I do not get 100%, take that same thing that we gave you, take that same contact list, go to the same doors to the same people and say, hey, I went and knocked doors. I talked to you about this. This person did not fulfill their promises. Let's get them out. I want, as a candidate, I want the constituents to hold me accountable to doing the things that I promised I'm going to do, to fighting for the things that I promised that I'm going to fight for. The power should be in y'all's hands, who represents you, not the person who represents you having the power over y'all. That is not the way the system is supposed to work. So to put some of those fears at bay is, judge me by my actions, judge me by what I do when I'm elected, and the power will be in your hands whether to give me another 2 years or not.
And sitting here listening to the response, I had something come to mind. So I'm gonna kind of pitch this to you, Matthew. My 2 cents on your answer, and kind of ask you what your thought is on it. So many people out there see these candidates. Donald Trump. I'm going to pick on Donald Trump for a second. Donald Trump was hailed as a hero to the Republican Party when he ran in 2016 because he exposed the establishment. Now you have a young candidate. It's not just Matthew. There are young people in the Republican Party that are running for legitimate change, something that we desperately need in this country. And this isn't me trying to come off a partisan or impartial to one candidate yet, but it's important that we make those judgments for ourselves. And Matthew, a quick question during the middle of this
Mhm.
train of thought to those people that are worried, about a young guy running, whether he's an undercover Democrat, whether he's this or that. I've heard them all. Does your district have your word that you're going to fight as hard as you can for them and do what is right in their interests?
Absolutely.
So, on that train of thought, a man like Donald Trump, a man like Matthew, a man like anybody else, a woman who is running for office, a lot of times they give up their own money, they give up their own time, they give up all these things. They give up an easy lifestyle. Matthew is like every other member running in the race in the 25th district. He's like everybody else, whether they're the most corrupt or the most righteous person. He will never live another private life as a citizen again because he will travel this district 10 years from now and people will remember his face. People will know that he ran for public office. A man can give up a lot of things, his privacy, his money, his finances, his luxurious lifestyle, if you will. At the end of the day, we look at the soldiers of this country. We look at the people that are fighting for change, whether that be our armed forces, our men and women overseas, which I just want to give a quick shout out in memoriam today. Today's episode is dedicated to the hundreds of innocent soldiers, sailors, and airmen that died at Pearl Harbor about 7:20 this morning. Over 500 aircraft from the Japanese Imperial Air Forces sunk many of our battle cruisers, our destroyers at Pearl Harbor Naval Station. Had blown up many airmen taking off for their morning flights in the B-17 station at Pearl Harbor Air Force Base. This episode is dedicated to them. But you look at those men that died at Pearl Harbor, you look at the people that went to World War II, the people that went to Korea, you look at the people that are fighting for change on the home front in the federal government. They can give up a lot, including their lives. Many times those who give up everything, the last thing that they have in their ownership is their word. If you have a candidate, if you have anybody who is running for change like Matthew, and they are giving their word to you as a citizen, you're not obligated to accept it. You're not obligated to go by their word. The American people have trust issues at a very understandable pace, a very understandable thing. They have been screwed over by Congress, their presidents. They've been screwed over by the Supreme Court. They've been screwed over by all of these terrible policies that have been put into place for 50, 60, 70 years now. If we can't take somebody at their word, what does that mean for us as people? When have we stopped giving change a chance? When have we ever stopped giving good people a chance to speak up and rise up? You see people doing this every day. People getting floundered by Congress in these subpoenaed hearings. People being drugged through the dirt. People having their entire life swept away from them because they have been discredited, disowned, and disliked by the mainstream media. If giving his word didn't stop Donald Trump from winning, why should it stop a young man like Matthew from trying to run? We have a very pathological illness going on in our country right now. If we don't like the way somebody looks, if we don't like the way somebody thinks, if we don't like the way somebody says, we discredit them. We spread misinformation. Now, this is the only thing that I will agree with the federal government on. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from the federal government. It comes from American citizens. We have people coming out saying this guy is bought out because we don't like the way he says. He's running against the opposition. He's running against the establishment. Donald Trump was treated that way. You look at good-hearted people in this country. We're so readily available and willing to give our lives for a guy because he's our buddy, because we contributed money to his campaign last time. We are so blindsided by partisanship this day and age that we are so blind to the iniquity in ourselves that we have become impotent to the choice that we have in an election. We have become so blindsided by partisanship. I like this guy because my mom worked for him. I like this guy because he's a family friend. I like this guy because he's a Republican. I like this guy because he's been in there for 20, 30,000 years, and there's never been anybody different. We finally have somebody that's willing to come in and give it a try. I'm not saying you have to like Matthew. I'm not saying you have to vote for him. That's the point of this program is we ask the pertinent questions and we get a response from the man himself. When have we ever done that in Washington? When's the last time you ever saw your current congressman? The last time you ever saw your current congressman coming out to the district and speaking out against his colleagues because they made an ill? This guy voted for the Afghan war. This guy voted to go into Iraq. During Operation Enduring Freedom, they had that road. The U.S. Army went down, and Sean was in the military. Many of you have seen him on Angelo Roca's show. Slaughtered a lot of innocent civilians on the side of a highway going into Iraq. When's the last time your current congressman might not even have to be in this district? When have the people outside the district ever seen their congressman say, we need to drag in an investigation, find out why the Army justified killing a lot of innocent people? We had a president who said there was weapons of mass destruction over there. When's Congress ever brought him in on a subpoenaed hearing? You see what I'm saying? The morality in this country is gone. And it's all because people pick a side of loyalty instead of the loyalty and allegiance to this country. Indivisible with liberty and justice for all is gone the moment that we start picking sides based on who somebody is instead of what they've done and what their actions have been. The book of James tells us, man is like a fleeting shadow. Our life is a very short thing. Make sure you're standing for the right thing. Christ himself said, show me your works by your faith, and I'll show you it by my actions. One of Christ's apostles said that in the Bible. I don't remember it at the moment, so you can fact check me on that later. When have our congressmen ever showed us their faith in the system, their faith in their voters by the actions that they've done? So, Matthew, another question I want to ask you is something very important. What drove you to wanting to get into politics? You majored in engineering, you became a college professor, you have your own medical device company. It seems like as an entrepreneur, you live a pretty good life. You know, you have the leadership capabilities, you have the education behind you, you have mentored generations of students. Why get into politics knowing that people will drag you through the mud?
Because something needs to be done. My business is focused on preventing people from getting addicted to pain medications, preventing people from ODing on fentanyl. that's pouring across our southern border. And the thing is, right now, both in the state house and the federal house, no one is doing a goddamn thing about it. And it's about time that we had somebody who actually understands the issue and is willing to work on it. And I'm sick and tired of us having politicians in office for 12 years, 20 years, and only ever passing one bill into law, just renaming post offices, and then ignoring their constituents, not picking up when you call the office, not even staffing the office, and then using our tax dollars to lie to us with billboards.
So we're going to go to a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to kind of discuss some other things about the campaign and about Matthew himself. Stick with us. God bless you. We'll be right back.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen of Johnson County and surrounding area. I know we have a few people listening out of state. I want to give a quick shout out to the people in Michigan that I heard were recently listening in. Our audience is growing, a wonderful thing. First, we want to say that Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is a place to find all of the best ways to listen and watch. The station app, which I highly recommend, is also available for free on both Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your local Texas sales rep at 844-839-4245. That's 844-839-4245. Be sure to dress your arms in MorthaTiffy.com. Try saying all that 3 times fast. I challenge y'all out there. So we're back with congressional candidate for TX25, Matthew Lucci. I'm going to kind of run over how this next segment's going to go. It's going to be a complete call-in segment. So feel free to interrupt. I'm going to be manning the phone line. I'm going to be letting Matthew do most of the talking in this second half. We're kind of going to go over one last pertinent question that I feel like some of our constituents have told me. I got asked it the other night, saying that we have Matthew on here quite a bit. Constituents have been sending me communiques about this question. So I'm going to be asking Matthew. We're going to be going to Sean. Many of you know that he has been co-hosting with me for almost 6 months now. He gave up his time. He gave up time with his family to do a free job as a campaign manager. We're going to be going from Matthew's question to be asking Sean. Sean, matter of fact, introduced the idea of having Matthew on the show after he had become campaign manager. So we're going to be asking Sean his opinion on Matthew in the months that he has worked not only for the station but for Matthew. The next thing after that is we're going to be letting Matthew take the helm on Republicans and the youth role in the state, the federal GOP, as well as what it means to be a candidate, what it means to run for office. So this is a call-in segment, 817-637-2585. 817-637-2585 is the call-in number there. Feel free to interrupt anytime you want. The phone is always on ring, and I can always pass it over to Matthew. So, Matthew, I got the question again last night from another constituent. I've been getting it pretty frequently, but I wanted to wait to have you on to have it answered. So we discussed you being the conspiracy of being a closet Democrat. That was disproven earlier on the show. The inability for people to have the word of a change maker. We discussed that a little bit. Another thing is people have been telling me there is a myth going around that you had worked with college Democrats, something like that. I can kind of see where, people get the idea of a closet Democrat, but I'm not one to make accusations until I have full evidence. That used to be the way this country was, innocent until proven guilty with a jury trial and a court of evidence. So can you kind of discuss the idea of what people have been discussing working with college Democrats?
Yeah, absolutely. I was involved in a lot in college. I was involved in the SMU debate team. I was involved in student senate. I was involved with an organization called Mustangs for Life, which is the pro-life organization on campus.
Yeah.
That's where I got this bracelet that says pro-life that I wear with me every day. Because if I was a one-issue voter, there would be this issue. That's my litmus test. If you are pro-life, then I will consider voting for you. If you are not pro-life, I will not vote for you. If you do not have a pro-life record, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm not going to go knock doors for you. I'm not going to support you. So I was also involved in college in an organization called Young Americans for Freedom. And then I was also involved in the College Republicans chapter. And for a lot of this stuff, you can go Google it, pull things up. You can find an article of me defending the pro-life memorial that they put on campus, commemorating all the lives lost every single day to abortion. But one of the things that you can also find is some involvement with an organization called College Democrats. Now, to go back and show you how I got involved with them and why, as a conservative, as a lifelong conservative, you have to go back and you have to look at what the policy of the university was, particularly through the student senate. And I was a student senator that had stood up and filibustered adding LGBTQ seats to the.
We are getting a
Senate.
call real quick, if it's all right that I interrupt.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can. Afternoon caller, you're on the air with Let Freedom Ring at JoCo Radio. This is Jake Wernette. Thank you for calling in. What's your comment, question, concern?
Jake, how are you today?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I wanted to go. Well, first of all, my name is Mike Hunt out of Denton. And I wanted to go over your one issue voting topic, if you will, for just a moment. I heard your guest say that he was staunchly pro-life.
Would you
Am I on the right page here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's discuss that for just a moment. The whole pro-life, pro-choice thing, I take issue with that. And there was a landmark case that was just finished up, I believe it was yesterday, where a lady was allowed to seek out an abortion for a lethal deformity in her baby. You believe that that lady should still be forced to give birth to that child?
My belief is that every child is endowed by our Creator with the right to life. And we should not, as a society, be pushing women into getting abortions. And we should, as a society, be helping women to raise young kids. So I don't know if that.
I agree with you to a certain degree, but I take issue with the idea of just being committed to bringing a baby into this world, knowing that that baby's life is going to be cut short and full of suffering. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that we should. I don't think we should push that. I don't think we should force women to give birth to babies that are obviously going to suffer and die a short time later. It goes against the whole notion of being pro-life in the first place.
Well,
you want to bring a life into the world that is intended to suffer? I don't think that's fair to the child.
Let me tell you, I am the second of 7 children. One of my brothers was born with a 10% chance of survival, and the doctors told my parents that abortion was their best option. And my family is incredibly pro-life. I'm incredibly pro-life, and I'm glad that after weeks and weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit, my brother pulled through. He's alive today. He just celebrated what I believe is his 14th or 15th birthday just last month. And so for us to say, that we get to play God and say who lives and dies, when we should be protecting each and every
neonatal diagnosis has come a long way in 15 to 20 years, though. Like, we're able to pinpoint certain diseases that don't even give you 10%. And don't get me wrong, I'm thankful your brother was born. I'm thankful your brother has lived as long as he has with the diagnosis that he was given, because that's no prognosis for life, is it?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, a 0 chance survival rate. I can't see bringing that child into the world and saying, well, sorry about your luck, kid, deal with it. That's not fair to the child. And it's easy to be pro-life because you're speaking for someone who does not have a voice.
Well, it's easy then to advocate for abortion because you're, again, speaking for someone who has no voice. You know, if you really want things to be fair for the child, you should let the child decide. And by letting the child decide, you have to let them live.
That's the same. That's almost the same thought process as letting a child decide whether they're male or female.
Not necessarily, but
it absolutely is.
If you're even
going
to get there,
doesn't need to make that choice.
If you're even going to get there, I think at the very least, the child has to have the ability to live, because in order to access any other choices, that child has to be able to be a living person to be able to make that choice. And if you kill the child, then that child gets to make 0 choices after that.
If the diagnosis prior to birth is that child is going to do nothing but suffer, then I think it's unfair to force them into the world to get to that stage, honestly. And I'm not saying I'm pro-abortion. I'm not pro-abortion necessarily, except in terms where it's not a viable pregnancy, or in a situation where a woman was raped. I don't believe she should have to rear that child.
Well, I think that you and I can just have a difference of opinion on those.
I think we probably can. Nice to chat with you.
Likewise. Thank you for calling in.
Bye-bye.
And you and the caller, Matthew, I'm sitting here listening to this. This is what our country lacks right now. And if there's any lesson that can be taken from this discussion, and I'm going to ask you the question, Matthew, that's something that not a lot of politicians are willing to accept, is even if they are very staunchly have an idea, even if what other people believe might be morally wrong, morally unjust, how are you as a politician going to work across the aisle, not necessarily compromise your ideas or compromise the beliefs of your constituents? How do you think we can bring this back to Washington and kind of be willing to work with everybody as our government used to?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to do is figure out what it is that really matters to the people that we're one, representing, and then 2, those that we're working with. You know, the United States is one of the only countries in the world that allows sex selective abortion. And now if we want to have true equality and prevent people from being discriminated against, well, being killed just because you're a female or killed just because you're a male, I think that's something that we could reach across the aisle and agree, like, hey, if you don't agree with me on anything else, you can at least agree with me that women shouldn't be killed before birth just because they're women.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we could get several Democrats on board with.
Can we move back to the SMU?
Yeah, let's go back to the point before the caller came in.
It was a great call too.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful call, and that's something that we should have more of in this country, is open dialogue. Go back to kind of discussing the school policy, Matthew.
Yeah. So I served as a student senator, and one of the things I did as senator was filibuster a bill that would add LGBTQ seats, special interest seats, to the student senate. And ultimately, I became the sole dissenting vote on that piece of legislation in the student senate. Um, and so after that, I was approached by the presidents of college Republicans and of Young Americans for Freedom, both of which I was heavily involved in.
Yeah.
And they were telling me, look, we've had a lot of problems with the Student Senate and their ability to give out funding for events, because in order to remain nonpartisan, the Student Senate had to give, say, if it was $10,000 to the college Republicans for an event, they could only do that if the college Democrats were asking for $10,000 for an equal event.
Yeah.
So the problem at the time was the college Democrats were in such dysfunction that they weren't really having events, bringing in speakers or anything like that. And that was
Decay in leadership or something along those lines.
absolutely, and that was hurting the Young Americans for Freedom, and that was hurting the college Republicans because they kept having to cancel on speakers.
So the college Republicans had canceled events just because the Democrats couldn't have an event.
Exactly, because it all came down to the school policy and
Yeah.
the student senate policy on funding. And so the boards of both college Republicans and Young Americans for Freedom came to me with this crazy idea of, what if you, using your organizational skills and your conservative track record, someone who really believes in free speech, which we were having all those issues on campus at the time. What if you go over there, you help the college Democrats rebuild their chapter so that they can start asking for $10,000 or $15,000 to have speakers come to campus, to bring events to campus, so that the college Republicans and the Young Americans for Freedom could access an equal amount of money. And so I prayed about it, and I thought about all of the issues with free speech happening on campuses across the country, including SMU, around that period of time. And I ultimately decided that I would do it, but I would only do it if I had a co-president who was actually a Democrat, because I believe that, the organization should be run by somebody who
Has those ideas.
actually has those ideals. But I also believe wholeheartedly that even if I disagree with something, I will fight to the death to make sure that someone has the right to say it. And that was my attitude going into working with the college Democrats, helping them put together events like the Democratic gubernatorial debate that year. We put that together at SMU basically out of thin air, and it was something that they had never been able to do before. They brought several candidates to campus. They even had a debate between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke they brought to campus together. That was unprecedented at the time, and it was only possible because folks stood up and said, you know what, we as conservatives, let's reach across the aisle there. Let's build up free speech, and allow that to happen on our campus. And along the way, we had this issue, and anyone can Google this and find this out. I believe there was a Texas Tribune article, a Washington Examiner, or Washington Post article about this. But the university was trying to move a 9/11 memorial from one part of campus to a less prominent part of campus. And we worked together to ensure that it stayed in one location. What they needed there was bipartisan support.
Yeah.
So the college Republicans were on board, Young Americans for Freedom were on board. I called my good friend, who is president of Mustangs for Life. We still chat to this day. And he got on board with it. They just needed college Democrats on board with it. And because I was on the college Democrats board at the time, I got to sign off on a letter to the administration and fight on behalf of a 9/11 memorial that many of the Democrats in that group were not in favor of. But I was able to bring that quote unquote bipartisan support.
Didn't you get a bunch of people to vote for Ted Cruz after that debate?
Yes. I mean, I was actually knocking doors for Ted Cruz at the time,
Yeah.
and everyone in the college Democrats organization, they knew I was conservative. And the thing about trying to engage younger people is you have to take the time to speak with them. You have to talk with them and say, okay, what is it that matters to you? Okay, well, actually, if you want a good job, in order to do that, we have to have a strong economy.
Yeah.
And we can't have a strong economy if we keep kicking the can down the road. And we cannot have a strong economy if we pay off everyone's student loans, because then that's not fair to you. It's not fair to Sean here. It's not fair to me. If we're all working to pay our own way through college, and then suddenly the country is saddled with enormous debt. And so I was able, through conversations like that, to bring over more than half of those in the College Democrats organization to join me in voting for Ted Cruz in the 2018 election. And I'm very, very proud of that.
So Matthew makes a very good point. I have quite a bit in common with Matthew on this, and I can see the necessity for this. There's two things that I quickly want to say, and then we're going to pass it over to Sean for his insight into why he started working with Matthew. It is necessary in this country for us to develop each other as American citizens. Now, hearing somebody tell me multiple times, hearing it said around the forums that Matthew must be a Democrat because he's working with Democrats. Well, our current congressman has to work with Democrats too. Our current congressman has to make compromises. Our current congressman has to work with people that have different ideologies than him. That doesn't make him a Democrat. That doesn't make him a communist. God forbid. That doesn't make him a Satanist or whatever. So why should the standard be different for somebody else other than who's already in office or somebody that is a party line voter? Here's the issue I hold with this. It doesn't make you, as an American citizen, open to seeing the way of life, the beliefs of others. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing compromising about understanding why people think the way they do. When J. Edgar Hoover was fighting communists, he had to know who his enemy was. He wrote an entire book about who the communists were, the history of communists. Does that make it J. Edgar Hoover a communist? No.
If I could interject here, just having that opportunity allowed me to also see the inner workings of the Democratic Party. And see how they were able to effectively execute a statewide strategy that flips so many counties from red to blue. And that's something that, I'm going and I'm meeting with county chairs across this district and across the state, trying to tell them, okay, look, the Democrats are doing this. In order to counter that, we have to do that. And part of it is we have to reach out to younger folks because the Republican Party is a dying party. I mean, we have young people trying to step up and fill the gap.
They're just not being allowed to.
Well, the thing is, like, we get demonized when we jump in, because we're challenging the DC establishment or the Austin establishment. When we're challenging the establishment fights back. And when they don't have anything to go after you with, if you don't have a big skeleton in the closet, they make things up or they blow things entirely out of proportion and they slander you. And if they can't get to you that way, they will go after your family like they've gone after my family. They've said sexually derogatory comments all over social media about my wife, and I don't appreciate that. I mean, the thing is, I'm a free speech absolutist, right? So come after me with whatever you want to come after me with. That's totally fine. I am fair game. But leave my wife out of it.
Many people, and you bring up another good point. I'm going to finish my initial thought here. Eisenhower is my favorite president. Eisenhower, many people would never say Eisenhower was a Democrat. Would we agree on that?
Well, the thing is, he was asked by the Democratic Party to run as their nominee, and he was asked at the same time by the Republican Party to run as their nominee. And guys like Donald Trump, he was actually a Democrat before switching over to the Reform Party, over to the Republican Party, back to the Democratic Party, back to the Republican Party before he ran in 2016. And then you've got Ronald Reagan, who was a lifelong Democrat before becoming a Republican. And I'd be interested to hear a little bit about Sean's testimony about how he got involved in this as a young person, because young people are just getting pushed out of the party and slandered by the establishment just for participating.
So Sean,
we're losing Texas because we have no new Republicans. You'd be surprised to find a Republican doesn't have gray hair and only a few years left. Not to sound derogatory, but that's the truth. I'm Sean Goins. I met Matthew here in Burleson at his announcement speech. That was the first time anyone ever come up to me and approached me as a veteran and as a young person and said, hey, what can we do to make this country work for you? And that was very unique for me because, I'm young, I'm conservative, and I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran, so Democrats want nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I'm very conservative, so the rhinos want nothing to do with me. And I'm young, so the rest of the Republican Party wants nothing to do with me. Kind of leaves me in a weird spot, right? I was very skeptical of Matthew at first, too. I didn't really know the current congressman. I knew it was Roger Williams, but that was it. And he told me, hey, he voted no for the wall, and he brought out all the evidence. And I looked into it after that announcement speech. I was like, you know what? This guy's been in office 12 years. Nothing's changed, only gotten worse. And to me, who served in the southern border with the Army, that was a stab in the back voting no for the border wall, because I had to deal with that crisis. I have friends on the border still down there dealing with that crisis still. It's gotten worse. And the fentanyl thing, too. I've lost a lot of good friends, mostly from the military, to fentanyl. And most of that goes back to the VA not giving them proper pain management and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that fentanyl came over that southern border. Our current congressman allowed that to happen. And here's why him and all these rhinos are allowing it to happen. They've been running on the southern border for 20 years now.
It's always a gamble.
And if they actually solve it, they don't have anything to run on because they offer nothing to our country.
It does not take 12 years to secure the southern border.
Yeah, we could have had it 2019. Then and there, we would not be in our current state.
It took the Soviets, 2 years to build the Berlin Wall, and we can't even build a wall on our southern border.
It was like a year and a half. I want to point this out, too. Matthew very much reminds me of that generation of men during the American Revolution. All of our founding fathers were 35 years or younger. I think Thomas Jefferson was like 25 when he signed it or came up with the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but it's 35 and younger.
The average age was about 28, 27. Marquis de Lafayette became a brigadier general at the age of 19.
Yeah. I wish I could recreate that. No, I hated the military. In World War II, the average age of the American soldier was 26 years old. Matthew's 25 here. Young American men get the job done. We've had a bunch of old rhinos in office for decades who have done nothing. Everything's gotten worse. And now young American men are answering that call again and saying, you know what? We're not going to have to fight the Germans this generation. We're going to have to fight the establishment this generation. Donald Trump was the one who really showed us that this is what was going to be the cause of our generation, the struggle of our
next
time.
American Revolution.
Yeah, and I mean that in peaceful terms. You're seeing young people across the board, local, state, and federal, rise up and say, we're done. Young people we're not taking this BS anymore. We're tired of being lied to with our tax money. We're tired of these foreign wars, sending billions to Ukraine when I can drive by the bridge and I can point out veterans, some of which I may have even served with under that bridge. We're tired and we're not taking it anymore. Young people we're the majority of voters now. And we're going to start coming out in force. And this is up to the Republican Party now, too. We have 100 volunteers and growing out of Tarleton University alone. We have groups out of UTA. We have precinct chairs coming to us, county chairs coming to us, all at the same thing. It's time for young Republicans to step up and be engaged by the party and mobilize.
Yeah.
Texas is turning blue because we cannot get young Republicans. There are plenty of young Republicans, tens of thousands. The GOP, like Vivek Ramaswamy said perfectly, is a party of failure by not engaging those young voters. And Matthew is taking our country back. We're taking our country back. We're going to make America great again.
I want to tie on to that.
This is the ultimate result of what Donald Trump did.
In the last minute and a half that we have here, I first of all want to thank Matthew for coming on here, explaining himself, being a good sport about this as usual. It's not, and the caller for calling, and I want to thank him for putting in his different opinion, because this is something that our country has lost. It's something that the Republican Party has lost. Back on Eisenhower. Eisenhower put on probably the most progressive guy, the governor of California, Earl Warren, as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Many people today could label Eisenhower as a liberal for wanting progressive civil rights, for wanting desegregation, but he's not. He stood on virtue. He stood on values, and that's something that we've lost in the Republican Party. We've lost the will to fight. I mentioned John F. Kennedy. People like John F. Kennedy had youth. They had stamina. They had public appeal, sex appeal to some young women out there. I'm not going to say whether that was Marilyn Monroe, but he got the job done. In his most tough times, he called in a guy from the GI generation. He called Dwight Eisenhower to compromise and work together on solving the Cuban Missile Crisis. So think about who you're going to vote for. Is it time that we embrace change, or do we sit and coddle the status quo? We're going to have Matthew on here again pretty soon. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And may the blood of Christ wash over this government. We desperately need it.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County. Joco Community Radio.